Now, Australian employers are failing to meet the growing technological needs of Gen Y business travellers, it seems, who rely much more on smartphones, the internet and social media. New research by Carlson Wagonly Travel showing the corporate sector is now under increasing pressure to meet the growing connectivity needs of tech-savvy travellers. Well, joining me in the studio to discuss this, Matt Carracher, Senior Director of Product Marketing from CWT Asia Pacific. Warm welcome to you. Where is the kind of breakdown in messages not getting through to the end user really showing up? Is it a lack of sales? Is it missed opportunities? What really is the fundamental failure?
Well, I think the failure comes from the research we did. We surveyed 1,000 business travellers, and 33% of those business travellers suggested that technology they use whilst travelling on the road is actually not meeting the standard of their needs or of what they want when they're travelling on business.
Because what do they want? What are they telling you that they need and yet it's not being delivered?
Yeah. The interesting thing is that the survey suggested to us that people want to remain productive whilst on the road. And they're using new technology devices such as smartphones and tablets to remain productive, to keep in touch with family and friends, to save time. And it's also an element of safety and security as well. They feel much safer whilst being on the road if they're connected and using the latest technology.
Because what happens when all that goes down? I mean, there's that shift in reliance, but is it a fail-safe, and is there a capacity to back up when you're on the road? I mean, where does it all stack up there?
Well, I don't think necessarily what the survey suggested to us of the people we questioned. It's not necessarily about a fail-safe or a backup. It's actually having the right technology in their hands so that they can compete against in the business market, that they can actually remain productive whilst on the road, that they do the same business task and the same tasks they can do as they're being in the office. And I think that's the critical point, or the key point, is that they want to do exactly the same things as they're doing in the office whilst they're on the road.
Which can be achieved, I suppose, without the old clunky laptop.
Exactly.
Is that been consigned to history? And if so, what time horizon would you say it's got?
Yeah, look, what we're seeing, certainly the clunky laptop is still being carried by the majority of business travellers. 83% are still carrying the laptop. But we're seeing an emerging trend of smartphones, obviously. 61% are carrying a smartphone while they're travelling. And obviously the tablet is also coming as well. And I think, within the next, some analysts say within the next 5 years, the tablet will actually outsell the laptop and will be the primary use of business travellers. Is
that something that then airports, for instance, are responding to with Wi-Fi capabilities and all of that? And if not, what's the kind of wake-up call for them?
Well, I think everyone in the supply chain of business travel, I think, are starting to wake up, and they're starting to develop their capabilities for people to remain connected. You certainly will see Wi-Fi on aeroplanes shortly. Certainly in hotels, they generally offer free Wi-Fi in the hotel lobbies, and airports will also, start to offer that type of connectivity.
Because you were saying before, they want to keep their productivity up.
Yes.
The business traveller, but how do you measure that when the downtime is getting eroded increasingly? You're talking about the airport is on, up in the skies as well. There's no break from it, or it looks as if there's no desire for there to be a break for it.
Yeah, and that's interesting, because what we did find is that there is actually an increased satisfaction with business travellers with greater technology devices. And they feel as though they can manage their work-life balance a lot better because they can actually stay in touch with family and friends, the increasing use of social media.
Are you surprised at all of that? Are they kind of just telling you almost what you want to hear because you caught them on a good day, or, that's a universal response from everybody?
It is a universal response. Like, for example, although it's starting to emerge with Generation Y. So we're seeing a generational shift of business travellers. But as baby boomers are starting to retire, Generation Y, for example, took up a third of this survey. So they're starting to use social media as their primary method of communication. And certainly they see it as an opportunity to stay connected at an airport, at a hotel, whilst they're in the air. And it's really to keep in touch with family and friends and remain productive.
Yep. That's the thing, because that social media has almost got that dual function. It's the keeping in touch, but it's also putting information out there where you don't necessarily want to get feedback. Sometimes it's a bit like the twittering, you know, someone will be covering an event, and for them to get a message back from you is frankly an unwanted distraction from the task. So it's not a two-way communication at that point. It's sort of a split level. It can reach social media, can't it?
Well, it can, but what we have found is that certainly people are using social media whilst on the road. 46% of the people surveyed suggested they're using some form of social media, either professional or social. But Generation Y are really changing that, in that 64% of the Generation Y are using social media whilst on the road.
Is this a wake-up call to conventional advertising that get with it, or curtains for you?
Well, I think it's a wake-up call for a couple of things. I think certainly for corporations and employers, it's a wake-up call because they need to give the right technology and the right connectivity to business people whilst they're travelling to remain productive and to remain competitive whilst on the road. And that's a key point. There's a certain amount of social media that they use to stay in touch with family and friends. And safety and security is another important part. You know, certainly the people we surveyed suggested they feel less secure if they're not connected somehow.
Got you. Yeah. Interesting how we define that very same sense of security. Matt, thank you so much. We're out of time. I have to leave it. Matt
Thank you very much.
Senior Director of Product Marketing from CWT Asia Pacific, no less.